Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the channel. Let's close up week 14 with the Monday Night Football showdown slate, a divisional matchup. We had one on Sunday night. It was a kind of fun game, kind of wonky game. Let's hope we get one on Monday night, but these are some good teams. These are some damn good teams. Some of the best in the NFL right now. Rams, Cardinals. Let's break it down from a showdown perspective, and let's slide on into it. Slide on into it. Schmack on into it. Schmack you right there with the information. Let's start right now, all the way up top, where you're going to find your man. We're going to go in salary order here. I appreciate all you beautiful people being here. If it's your first time you like the video at any point, consider subscribing. But Mr. Cooper Kupp, all the way up top. Fill up my cup, Cooper Kupp, and put it back, all the way back. Finish your drink. So Cooper Kupp is here at $12,000. Look, I like Cooper Kupp. I know he's $12,000, but this man has gone for 10 or more targets in every game but one. And that one game that Cooper Kupp didn't go for 10 targets this season, he had 7 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets, right? So he's now had 20 or more DraftKings points in 6 to 7 games. He leads the NFL with 11.3 targets per game. He has a 31% target share. Cooper Kupp is my highest projected player on the slate, so I think he is appropriately priced at 24.2 fantasy points. Now, I have done my projections. I have done my ownership. I have ran my first run at the Optimize Air. All of this is on Patreon. It is all linked down below if you would like to peek at it or do some of the same for yourself. I am currently getting Cooper Kupp in over 50% of my lineups. So you might be out there and going, $12,000 is too much. There is a player on this slate, a value play, that is allowing us. And yes, there's kickers and defenses, but there is a player that is allowing us to get to Cooper Kupp and any studs that we want to pay up for kind of easily. So Cooper Kupp, fill up my cup, Mr. Cooper Kupp. I'm getting over 50% right now. It's like 55%. For me, he is going to be a pretty clear cut. Yes, sir. He's a yes. So next up is going to be Kyler Murray on the opposite side. And I love what we saw last week in some respects. Look, Kyler returned last week, and he only threw the ball 15 times. They only ran 54 plays. The Arizona Cardinals, who are known for going so fast-paced, here we go. Let's rock and roll. They only played 54 plays. That's it. That's the least of the season so far for Arizona. Only 15 passing attempts for Kyler. It was a slow-paced game. They faced the Chicago Bears, which made it even more slow-paced, right? There were some big defensive plays, which ended up limiting their offensive plays. And then in general, Kyler was running more. This was fantastic to see. I mean, he came into that Green Bay game where he ended up injuring his ankle with a shoulder injury that was somewhat similar to last season's shoulder injury where we saw him stop running. And then he slowly started to stop running this season. The whole reason you play an expensive Kyler Murray in DFS, I mean, yeah, his big-time throw rate, according to Pro Football Focus, is number 2 in the NFL this year. But the reason you're playing him is the fact that, look, Kyler Murray has the rushing upside. You like the fact that he can drop 50 to 100 rushing yards and maybe a touchdown or 2 in a game. But Kyler Murray wasn't showing that. I mean, you're getting games of 1, 6, and 10 rushing yards with 3 of his last 4 games. He comes back, he returns a season-high 59 rushing yards on 10 rushing attempts, 2 rushing touchdowns. So the guy who only throws 15 times last week scores 31 fantasy points, leads all of the players in scoring in fantasy points. Why? It's because he ended up going on the ground for 18 fantasy points alone. So the fact that we got to see Kyler be healthy, he got to run and he was healthy, I like it. And because of that mobility, because it's back, he is a fair price here, if not underpriced, and his captain upside is firmly in play. I'm currently getting Kyler Murray in 32% of my lineups as a captain option. Again, this is early on. We'll see on the live stream later today, which you should tune in for, by the way. It's at 6 p.m. East Coast time. You ask any questions you want, and we answer them. And we have a kickback. We're relaxing. Yeah, we're analyzing stuff. We're reacting to news, but we're also answering your questions. We're having a nice, relaxed time. So Kyler Murray is a yes for me right now. I have a whole lot of Kyler Murray, not just factoring in the captain ownership. I'm getting Kyler Murray in somewhere around 70% of my lineups. That'll probably be close to the field. I expect him to come in 65% or so owned, but I'll get some leverage in the captain spot for sure. Now, Matthew Stafford, I'm not going to have interest in the captain spot. I'd rather just pay up to Kyler Murray or go down to some cheaper options. If I'm going to choose a quarterback there, give me the mobile upside of Kyler Murray. If I'm going to choose an expensive quarterback, if they're only an $800 difference, I'm going to choose Kyler Murray, who I've graded out as a better player right now, who I have for about 2 more fantasy points. That mobile upside just makes it really hard for Stafford to compete. Where Stafford comes in, though, is his 37 attempts per game, is his, right now, 3rd in the NFL, 301 passing yards per game, right? He's gone for 20 or more DraftKings points in 75% of his starts, 9 of 12 this year. So he's been solid from that regard. So Stafford is definitely in play. If I'm choosing one, it's Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is probably going to come in about 15% higher owned, so just kind of have that game in your head where if you're playing in the Millie Maker, you can leave $800 on the table to go to Stafford. He's going to be 15% lower owned. You naturally get you more unique there. But the ceiling of Kyler Murray looks a lot better. I currently have Kyler Murray, if you factor in my cap captain ownership. I currently have him in about 30% or so more of my lineups than Stafford. Stafford, though, I am getting in close to 50% of my lineups, but I expect to be below the field on Stafford. If you're building one lineup right now, instead of putting Stafford as a yes, and look, if I'm playing 150s, I'm going to get like 45% of him, so he's a yes. But if you're building one lineup, Stafford starts to become a leverage play for you for sure off of Murray, but I don't think that's the spot that I'm trying to personally find much leverage. I think that Kyler's access to his ceiling actually gives you some of that leverage. Now we get a situation that's important to break down here. James Conner is $9,800 as of 4 p.m. Eastern time today. So maybe you're watching this and that's already occurred. We're going to find out if Chase Edmonds is going to be elevated to the practice squad. He's been practicing this week, designated to return. Since he is technically still on IR, he has not been yet elevated to the active roster. We don't know if those have been limited practices. We've been seeing some tape of him catching passes and jogging, but we don't know how much he's actually doing. The reports are seeming to indicate that he will be activated by the deadline today, but we don't know for sure. If he is indeed activated, a $9,800 James Conner is really hard to sell here. I mean, it's really hard. Sure, James Conner, who continues to score a touchdown or two every single week, yeah, sure, you can tell me that at $9,800, if he scores 2 touchdowns on a showdown slate, he could still be needed. I understand that. But James Conner at $9,800, if Edmonds returns, is a guy who's going to go out there and see 12 touches to Edmonds, 10 to 12 touches, a 50% backfield split, and he's more than double the price of Chase Edmonds today. Edmonds is literally 60% cheaper than him. So James Conner, this is not very similar. It's a somewhat similar situation to you had Damian Harris as like a $10,000 or $9,000 running back last Monday in that weather game, and nobody wanted to play him because he was so expensive. And we were saying on the live stream, I mean, this guy might become a leverage play. Once the weather became apparent, he was definitely a leverage play. But this is not the same situation because this game is not going to be a crazy weather game. It's not a game where they're going to have to run the ball 40 plus times, right, and lean on the rock. So James Conner here in this situation, if Chase Edmonds returns and the news is indicating that Edmonds looks fully healthy because he's been practicing, it's a situation where I probably, if you're playing one lineup, I stay away from James Conner. I understand if people are really risky out there and think that this is the leverage play to get to. It could be a case because Conner is going to be like 30% owned. I just think that there's probably 1 or 2 other leverage plays, specifically at the wide receiver position, that'll be lower owned that I'd rather shoot for the upside for, and they're cheaper. I'd rather play in that $9,000 range if you're choosing between Conner and Hopkins. Yeah, Hopkins, he might have to see Ramsey. I'm going to get so many questions today of, aren't you worried about DeAndre Hopkins on Jalen Ramsey? Honestly, no. Like, Jalen Ramsey has been beat this year. Jalen Ramsey is going into the slot a lot. Jalen Ramsey did not travel with Devontae Adams all that much, and Devontae Adams beat him. I think that DeAndre Hopkins is a similar caliber of receiver. I think Adams is better, but similar caliber to Devontae Adams, and I think he can beat Jalen Ramsey in his days back with Houston and Ramsey in Jacksonville. He had about half the time beating him. But Ramsey just isn't playing all that much this year out wide. I mean, he's playing 40% of his snaps in the slot so far this season. He is playing almost as like a middle linebacker on a lot of these plays. So just keep that in mind when you're out there and saying a lot of things. I think that Hopkins is going to be a fine play today. I don't think that he's an elite play at this price tag. If anything, I do think he probably comes in a little bit under-owned here. So if you're choosing somebody in the 9K range, I'll take Hopkins. But if you can get up to Stafford, I prefer to get to Matthew Stafford in that price range. I think you maybe get a little bit of leverage on Hopkins here, but the price tag is appropriate. It's fair. He returned last week, so a season high or a week high 71% of the snaps out of all the Arizona guys, so it didn't seem like he was limited all that much. Now you get to some guys, Van Jefferson, Sony Michel. Van Jefferson is not going to be highly owned, right? I mean, he's $8,000. It's kind of this weird price range where he's kind of in no man's land. $1,600 is the next closest guy, and then you drop down to Sony Michel at $8K, who Sony Michel might be the highest owned player on the slate. So Jefferson is sort of in this range where he might come in as a leverage play later in the day. I currently have Jefferson projecting out for like 28% ownership. That might even be high. This is not the spot that I'm going to be taking the ownership hit, but he's definitely strongly in play. I'm not going to put him on here as a no. This is not the spot where I'll try and find leverage, though. Van Jefferson at $8,000. Look, the guy's role has been fantastic. I mean, if you're looking at Van Jefferson over the last 6 games, he's averaging 7.3 targets per game, only 1 game below 7 targets during that time. That is a 21% target share over the last 6 games. Again, about 2 to 2.5 of those is with Odell. 32 routes run per game. He's getting 80 or more air yards, so downfield usage is what you want to see in 5 out of 6 games. So Jefferson is still firmly in play in a showdown slate, just kind of priced up relative to basically this whole next range. Sony Michel down to probably Chase Edmonds is going to be a very strong range for us. But before we talk about that range of where the really strong plays are, and there's a couple of solid leverage plays here, I want to let you know about my daily fantasy course and the offer we're running with Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks, you get a free bet up to $100 if you're a first-time depositor. That's the thing we've done with them basically all season long since we partnered in March. But now we're doing a holiday special. You get my daily fantasy course, which is 10 hours of videos, a bunch of downloadables. It's about just basically how to become a better, think like a game theory, think of where the edges are, get your emotions out of it, the analytics side of it, how to basically become a better DFS Player and actually start profiting. That is a $100 course that I've had it for about a couple years now. This is the first time I'm ever running a deal like this on it. It is free. It is free if you are a first-time depositor. So if you've already signed up for PrizePicks, but you want that course, go ahead and get your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle to sign up and deposit, and bam, you get that as well. Make the minimum deposit of $10 or whatever. Bam, you get the free $100 course if it's something you wanted. That is if you use the code CLASS, like you're in school, CLASS, CLASS. You get a free bet up to $100, and you get the course for free. So that's just something you should keep in mind if you're looking to take advantage of it. That is only lasting for the next few days as a holiday special because PrizePicks is sponsoring that. And once they tell me, hey, enough people have signed up, we're ready to roll, then the offer is off the table. You can take the course at any time you want. It's a pre-recorded course. It's not like you have to be in there at a certain time. You take it whenever you want. You want to watch it for 10 minutes, watch it for 20, check it out. You can check it out down below. The course right now, PrizePicks, if you wanted to also take advantage of the free $100 bet, I took Kupp over 88.5 receiving yards. We continue to take this. He has only not hit this number in one fucking game. Every game but one, he has hit this number. So I'm going to continue to take it because the number doesn't move, 88.5. They post that every single week. And then Rondale Moore, we're going to get to Rondale Moore in the DFS slate. I take him over 20.5 receiving yards. I have him for about 39 receiving yards on this slate. I combine those two together, a $50 bet to win $150, and we use the code CLASS, and we get that free $100 to bet with this and the free entry into the course, which if you've already used that code and you're waiting for the course, it's going to be coming this week. I'm just waiting for them to send me the information on who has signed up. So there you go. There's all your offers. Lovely time, the sponsors of the program. Now we can get back to the lovely video here where Sony Michel is probably the best play in the slate. He's the best play in the slate projection-wise, right? I have him projected for almost 18 fantasy points at $7,200. Sony Michel right now is my fourth highest projected player. Based on my projections, he should be in the $9,000 range. There's no Darrell Henderson. He was put on the COVID list midweek towards the end of the week, so this price point is not accurate for that. It's not reflecting that. He has the third best run blocking advantage on the week against Arizona's bottom 5 run defense. They rank 31st on the entire season, so second worst in the NFL. And last week we saw Sony Michel get the workhorse role with Henderson activated as just an emergency back, and Michel saw 93% of the opportunity share. Mekhi Sargent, the former Tennessee Titan, was the only other guy to see touches, and he saw 24 attempts, 4 targets, 129 yards. He scored 24 DraftKings points. He went the fuck off. Sony Michel found the end zone. So Michel is a very firm yes for me. Michel is just one of these guys that you probably just blindly put into your lineup on this slate. It just looks too good. I mean, the guy's going to come into this game. He's probably going to see at minimum 16 to 18 opportunities. I think that no matter what the ownership is, it's probably not high enough. Like even if he's 60 to 65% owned today, I think that his optimal ownership lineup probably is going to be somewhere around 75 to 80% on a showdown slate. Now you get this really strong range from Odell to Kirk to Ertz to Higbee to all these pass catchers, AJ Green, Edmonds. This is kind of a range where whoever scores a touchdown is probably going to win for you, but none of them are going to be highly owned because they're all pulling ownership from each other, and Sony Michel is soaking up so much of that ownership. We can start with Odell, who Odell in 2 full games, right? 2 full games with this team has ran 50 routes now. He has a 22% target share. That's 15 targets during that time, 3 red zone targets, and 234 air yards these last 2 games is not only leading his team, but it's number 6 in the NFL. So lots of upside here for Odell, who I think you can expect somewhere around 6 targets, 5-6 targets from tonight at 6,200. It makes him a pretty solid play. Now the ownership is going to come in on Odell though. So Odell is not, if I'm playing one lineup, Odell is firmly in play, but I'm going to prefer this next guy over Odell because he's cheaper and he's probably going to come in with like 10% less ownership. So if Odell comes in tonight with like 30% ownership, and by the way, if I'm looking at my ownership numbers tonight, I think that I'm currently getting right now 29% Odell. So I'll probably come in around the field on Odell. I'm coming in a little bit above the field though on Christian Kirk. I'm getting closer to 40% Christian Kirk, who looks to finally be fully healthy, who is the clear wide receiver 3 on this offense, the clear slot guy over Rondale Moore, playing 55% of the snaps to Moore's 40% of the snaps last week. You can't really look into how these guys performed last week because Kyler only threw 15 times. I mean, you had Kirk seeing 3 targets on 13 actual pass attempts if you don't count throwaways and batted down passes, and the quarterback being hit as he throws. So, I mean, 3 of 13, that looks like a pretty damn good target share, but he can kind of throw it out. But Kirk now has 5+ targets in 4 straight games with Kyler. He scored double-digit fantasy points in 6 out of 8 games with Kyler, and he looks like he's finally over this lower body injury. He is somebody who is definitely having, I would consider, a breakout year in the games where he's healthy. And if you're going to get Christian Kirk a part of this offense where Kyler probably throws 30 times, where Kirk operates out of the slot, if you're going to get him tonight at like 20% owned for a guy who normally runs around 25 to 30 routes, I like that. So Christian Kirk for me is going to be a yes. I think that you get nice leverage currently on Christian Kirk. Is he a captain option tonight? Yeah, sure, he's a captain option. I'd rather go up to the dudes who are just projecting out like Kyler and Kupp for insane points. But if you're talking about like the Millie Maker, yeah, he's definitely a captain option. Another potential leverage play is going to be Zach Ertz. We don't really have a sample of Zach Ertz with Kyler Murray though. Like Kyler Murray got hurt and then Zach Ertz played with backups, and Zach Ertz was like the only dude in there when AJ Green was out and Kirk was banged up and there was no Hopkins. So it's not like a true sample of this team being fully healthy. We finally got that last week, but they only threw 15 times. Zach Ertz ended up seeing in that game 2 targets, which ended up being like a 15% target share. But in his full-time role with this team over his last 3 games, he's seeing 26 routes, 6.7 targets targets per game. The routes are good to see. The targets are a little bit skewed because so many guys have been out. I think that you probably see on this slate Zach Ertz become somewhat of a leveraged play. I think that Zach Ertz is a solid play. Again, I prefer Christian Kirk for similar price. The wide receiver just has more downfield upside. Ertz has more touchdown upside, though. So I think that he is definitely in play. He is yet again a leverage play. I will prefer Christian Kirk, but he's a leverage play. I don't think he'll be as highly owned. Tyler Higbee is going to break the fuck out someday. Like very, very soon, Tyler Higbee is going to break out. Not only does he lead the NFL in snap share for tight ends, he's third in routes run. He has a fantastic matchup against Isaiah Simmons this week, who allows over 1.1 yards per cover route, which is like bottom 8 on the week for all linebackers. He plays out of the slot or out wide about 50% of the time. And here's the thing. This dude's running 30 routes per week. He's seeing over 5 targets per game. And over the last couple of games and weeks now, with him being like this primary tight end, Johnny Munt being on IR for most of the season, and him having to operate a little bit more as this slot receiver, the dude's running like 35 to 45 to even 50 routes in some of these games. If you're out there for that long, eventually you're going to start to find either the end zone or higher target games. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing red zone targets. You're seeing 6-7 target games lately. So Tyler Higbee is somebody at $5,000. I'm currently projecting Tyler Higbee out for 24% projected ownership. I think he comes in with similar ownership to Zach Ertz. I currently have more Tyler Higbee. I think that Tyler Higbee right now, if I had to look at this slate in this range of the Christian Kirks, the Higbees, in the Zach Ertz, I think that Tyler Higbee, because of his price point, is probably the best leverage play, but I think the ceiling of Christian Kirk is better. So I kind of see Zach Ertz sandwiched in between there as a fine play, but I prefer Christian Kirk and Tyler Higbee up and down below him. The next guy up is AJ Green, just kind of a meh play. Like, I don't really have a strong stance on AJ Green. I think that he looks okay. I think that he's going to operate on the outside. The dude basically has ran 25 plus routes in every other game, if you don't consider last week when they didn't really run many routes because they ran the ball 35 times and only passed 15 times in the game. But he's seeing like 5 or 6 targets per game. He has an 87% participation rate. He's a cheap price point tonight, so he's in play, but he's just a mad play. The ownership is fair. I mean, AJ Green's coming in with like 25% ownership. I think that's about what it should be, and there's not much else to say there. I think that his ceiling is pretty limited. It's touchdown or bust, so I'm not above. I'm not really too much below the field. If he comes in at 25% ownership tonight, I currently am getting AJ Green in 26% of my lineup, so I'm as neutral as you can possibly be on the AJ Green play tonight. I don't think there's much upside in going against it or with it. And as we get to these value plays, this is a guy I really like, is Chase Edmonds, if he's indeed active. If Chase Edmonds is not activated, he's a clear no. Eno Benjamin actually starts to come and play for a couple of touches, maybe, if that. It probably just makes me like James Conner a whole lot more. But Chase Edmonds, if he's indeed activated, which is where he's trending right now, is a solid play at $4,600. I mean, this guy is going out there, he's seeing like 12 opportunities per game when he's healthy. If he's activated, I'm going to assume he's fully healthy. He's going to be a favorite in this game. He's half the price of James Conner. So Chase Edmonds is going to be one of the better value plays on the slate. I have Chase Edmonds projected right now basically for the same, very close to like an Odell or Van Jefferson, who are $4,000 more expensive than him. So yes, Chase Edmonds for me is going to be a yes today. Chase Edmonds for me, is he a captain option? I think you can put Chase Edmonds in the captain spot. I think there's limited upside there. I think you can find better opportunities. One, if you're just trying to find value with like a Christian Kirk or one of these guys we're about to talk about next, Sony Michel, those types of guys. I'm getting Chase Edmonds on 35% of my lineups right now. So 35% of my lineups compared to like the 10% I'm getting of James Conner. I like that. The kickers, the defenses are in play. I'll prefer the kickers over the defenses in this one. I'll just take the secure points. Both defenses have a really good pass rush, but the second, and look, the Rams defense overall is great. Their run defense, their tackling, their pass rush, their secondary because of that all. And then if you look at the Cardinals, I mean, it's really just a pass rush, a lot of which might be skewed from like the first month of the season when Chandler Jones was going off. But the kickers, the defenses are in play. If you ask me if you're building one lineup, which ones do I prefer? I'll prefer the kickers on this slate to the defenses, even though the defenses are a little bit cheaper. The kickers project out for more points. And I don't think, I mean, barring a defensive score, I'm just not going to be getting too much of the kickers, that or much of the defenses. And to show you exactly what I mean there, I'm getting about 20% of each kicker. I'm getting about 15% of each defense. So it's not like a massive difference, but if you force me to choose there and put a no on the defenses, again, I'm still going to be getting like 15% of them just to choose between the kickers and defenses for you. And then to close it up with some of the value plays, like trying to find value below $3,000 is hard and easy, right? So here's the thing. The reason why it's hard is there's not many options. Most of these guys stink and won't see the field. The reason why it's easy is there's one option, but he's going to be highly owned. Like Eno Benjamin, if Chase Edmonds returns, I'm not interested. Even if Chase Edmonds doesn't return, Eno Benjamin didn't see any work last week, right? Last week he only played 5 snaps, saw 2 attempts on a target for 13 yards, right? So that's not good. He's seen 17 opportunities in 3 full games without Edmonds, so that's nice. You get 5 or 6 per game for 2,600, but he only saw 5 snaps last week. They said, you know what? With Kyler Murray back, we're going to run a little bit more. We gave Rondell Moore 3 rushing attempts last week. We obviously have James Conner will continue to to feed 20 plus opportunities like they did last week. Under seeing 22 opportunities per game in the last 4 games, well, with Edmonds hurt in one of those games and out for 3 of them. So yeah, I mean, Eno Benjamin for me, I really can't like him. Even if Edmonds is out, Eno Benjamin's going to project for me for like a 1 point, somewhere around there. The guy you want to get is Rondale Moore. They fucked his pricing up. Rondale Moore at $2,000 makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, even in Rondale Moore's bad games, he's still getting like 2 or 3 rushing attempts. He's still seeing 2 or 3 targets, and he's finishing with like 4 or 5 fantasy points, even in his bad games. So for a $2,000 player, I think that's a little bit low. And then obviously there's games where he's playing better. I mean, the guy's absolutely fantastic. A 4.37 40. He is probably going to have the best burst and agility on the field tonight for the rookie out of Purdue, the 2nd round pick. Rondale Moore, it's hard to pass up. There's just no leverage off of Rondale Moore. The leverage off of Rondale Moore would be paying $2,000 more for a kicker, which is not really leverage. I think Rondale Moore is similar to Sony Michel in terms of if you're just building a lineup tonight, Rondale Moore and Sony Michel are kind of like your blind guys you put into your lineup, and you're just really trying to find that 1 or 2 leverage plays, and there's a whole lot in that 6K range that we went through. But I mean, Rondale Moore, look at this, right? I mean, he's had some bad games, right? He's had some bad games of just scoring. Like last week, he scored 2 points. Again, no, they didn't really throw the ball much, but then he gets 16 points, 3. If you're talking about the last games that he's played with Kyler Murray when Kyler's been healthy, 4, 6, 15, 7, right? 2, 25, 11. It's kind of a whole wide range of outcomes. But in all those games when Kyler Murray was active, if you look at Green Bay in week 8 before he was injured, I mean, you're getting 26 routes, 14, 20, 18, 13, 13, 22, 13. So if you can get 15 routes and 2 rushing attempts out of a $2,000 player where there's no real other upside on the slate, yeah, I'm going to go there. I mean, Rondale Moore for me projects out for like 7 fantasy points or so. That might even be a little bit high, but even if he projected out for 5 fantasy points, it's literally triple what anybody else down here is projecting out for. You have Demetrius Harris, who's only ran 8 total routes over the last 4 games. He's a blocking tight end. No, thank you. You have Ben Skowronek. Ben Skowronek has been this guy. He's been this number 4 wide receiver for the team since Robert Woods has been out. He played 25% of the snaps last week. Look, he's not really that athletic. He's nice size, right? He ends up being 6'2", 220 pounds, but he has no speed. He caught 1 35-yard pass last week on 2 targets. He ran 9 routes. So here's the thing. I think Ben Skowronek runs 6 to 8 routes today, maybe sees a target. If he catches a 35-yard pass like he did last week, then great. He scores 4 fantasy points, and he might not even be needed at that point, depending on what Rondale Moore does. So if there's anybody at $1,000 or below that you're looking for, it would be this fella, but I'm not going to go there. Mekhi Sargent was with Tennessee in the preseason, had some decent games fantasy points-wise, not really efficiency-wise. He's $600. He operated as the running back 2 last week, but operating as the running back 2 didn't really do much. He saw 7% of the opportunities, which resulted in him seeing 2 attempts for 5 yards on 3% of the snaps. I expect similar usage today, and at $600, just know he's the backup running back who, I mean, maybe if the game gets out of hand, or maybe if something happens to Sony Michel, yeah, Sargent starts to see some usage. So if you're trying to play it from that angle, I think that Sargent would actually probably be a better play than Ben Skowronek if you're trying to play it from the angle of, look, there's only Sony Michel who's had his own injury history ahead of him. Maybe I play Mekhi Sargent hoping for a Sony Michel injury. I don't want to hope for people's injuries, but that's kind of the only path for him to have upside. Last guy in the slate's Antonio Wesley. With DeAndre Hopkins returning last week, Wesley resorted to being the wide receiver 5, and he only ran 2 routes in that game. So, I mean, that's from him running 20, 22, 27, 32 the previous 4 weeks with Hopkins out. I think we can firmly say that he might not even be active tonight, and if he is, expect 4 or 5 routes, and that's about it. So there you go. You can clearly see if I mean, kickers and defenses are what they are. You can expect somewhere between 5 and 10 points most of the time from them, and really probably 5 to 7 points in a lot of games. But outside of that, it's just kind of Rondale Moore. Like, there are somewhat roles in there for Ben Skowronek and Mekhi Sargent, but those roles are legitimately going out there and playing, maybe touching the ball 1 time, and that's like a good game for them. At least with Rondale, we know there's manufactured touches, probably a manufactured screen or 2. So that's where we're at. What you're trying to get different on this slate is right here. You're trying to get different from Odell's $6,200 price tag to Chase Edmonds' $4,600 price tag. That's kind of the range in here. If you can find 2 guys who are going to be leverage plays, which for the most part, maybe outside of Edmonds, he picks up ownership. AJ Green, Higbee, Ertz, Kirk, and Odell, you can't really go wrong. They're all going to be average to lower owned, so whichever one pops off, if 1 or 2 was to, you're going to have some success and have leverage because they're all pulling from each other on tonight's slate. So that is where I'm at on this slate. I appreciate you tuning in. If you want to understand what leverage is, the DFS course is a great spot for that. But if you want to see where my projections, rankings, ownership, the optimizer, a Discord with 1,000+ members, which might be, honestly, might be the best benefit to have a community of like-minded people. You can actually go somewhere where people are like, oh yeah, I play DFS. Oh yeah, I bet on sports. Oh yeah, this is cool. Yeah, nobody I fucking know does. That's kind of how I am. Nobody I fucking know. Like, they do maybe here and there try and play the Millie Maker, but in depth trying to watch videos like this. I appreciate you all a ton. Come join that community. We'll welcome you. I'm in there. We're chilling out, relaxing, maxing, all cool. And that course, if you want it for free with a $100 bet for Prize Picks. Again, if you're already a user, go ahead and get your brother, your wife, your sister, your aunt, your uncle. Use the code CLASS. You get the course as well for free. And then they get the free bet of $200 to try and get some dollar-rooskies on Prize Picks. So thank you for tuning in, gang. I'll see you on the 6 p.m. East Coast time live stream later today. I appreciate you all more than you even know. I'll see you all in the next one.